Casting Shadows, the newest product by Unstable Games, has an expansion, the Ice Storm expansion, which allows you to play with up to 6 players, which we're going to be talking about today. So let's get started. So the expansion adds 2 new playable characters to the game, which expands it to 6 characters, 6 players. And then just like the base game, you can get 2 little meeples, new guys, and 2 new player boards, character boards. Show you the names. Talon Lightfeather and Frost Polar Paw. And then this is their shadow forms. And along with the new characters comes new status ailments. Well, only status ailments. So like you see here, their ability, spend 4 shadow energy to stun each enemy on your current hex tile. And then Frost the Merciless. Spend 4 shadow energy, choose an adjacent hex tile, freeze each enemy on that hex tile. So I guess we could talk about the new status ailments, which come with these new little token guys. So this is for freezing, this is for stunning, and there's new rules that go along with the new status ailments. So yeah, it comes with its own little rule book here. So we'll quickly first go to the new status ailments. So freeze, it makes it so you cannot move. And stun gives you less resources. So the freeze, if you're frozen, if you have the frozen token at the beginning of your turn, you can't move during that turn. And if you're frozen during your turn, because there are counter spells that allow you to freeze an enemy, then you can't use the rest of your movement during that turn. And then your next turn, you can't move. And when you start a turn with the freeze token, at the end of that turn, you remove the freeze token. And you can only have one of these at a time. So you can't be stunned and frozen. And you can't get more frozen. Now the stun one, if you have the stun at the beginning of the turn, you roll 1 less resource die. If you're stunned during your turn, because again, there's another counter spell that can stun you during a turn, whoever stuns you chooses one of your resource die or tokens or whatever and takes it away from you. And then you'll have it on your next turn, and you'll only be able to roll 4 resource die instead of 5. And then at the end of that turn, you get rid of the status token. So basically, whatever turn you start with the status token, at the end of that turn, you get rid of it. It only lasts 1 turn, maybe like 1.5, depending on if someone uses a counterspell against you. And then, of course, just like with the base game, there are tiles, new tiles. This is for Frost. This one is for Talon. A new center tile, the Mushroom Bog. And then just like with the regular game, has a little reference sheet here for showing which each of the areas do when you land on, or when you're on them at the beginning of the turn, or during the turn. So like the Mushroom Bog, you take 1 more damage, and then like if you're on the Glacier, if you damage an enemy, you can spend a blue orb to freeze an enemy, and then while you're on the Floating Temple, it's basically the same thing, just with stun. If you damage somebody while you're on that tile, you can spend a red orb to stun somebody. And then here in the book, they show you the extended board, basically, placement. So like the new board goes there next to that one. Player 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, you know, depending on what character you're playing, that's where the board goes. And they show you right there that that's their board. Otherwise, the rules are the same, and like the placement of everything is going to be the same. You just now have extra tiles and the extra status tokens for the freeze and for the stun. Now it also comes with, comes with more reference cards, which are the same as in the base game. Comes with new counter spells. So these two, if you use this one, you'll stun an enemy, and use this one, you'll freeze an enemy. So then it would happen in the middle of their turn, and then they would have another turn of being frozen or stunned. So of course there's new shadow companions. Each have their own different abilities they do. This one particularly deals with the expansion, because if he does each time an enemy tries to freeze you, you freeze them instead, and then each time an enemy tries to stun you, you stun them instead. So it specifically goes well with the expansion. Now, there's a lot more stuff with the shadow fragments in this too. There's actual shadow fragment resource items. That's all the ones they add, is all just shadow fragments. These are all the resource cards they add in the game, is the shadow fragments. And new conversions. So converting converting orbs into shadow fragments, turning gems into shadow fragments, turning shadow fragments into different orbs and gems. So it's all about converting shadow fragments into other stuff and other stuff into shadow fragments. And then added a bunch of new spells. These are all the different spells it added. A lot of spells. Add a lot of spells. And a lot of them, like this one, spend 1 shadow fragment to deal 3 damage to an enemy. So a bunch of them cost shadow fragments, and then like even to get the spell cost shadow fragments. So a lot of this expansion is about stunning, freezing, limiting resources, and getting a lot more shadow fragments and spending shadow fragments. So other than the new status ailments, the rest of the rules are the same. The game is the same. You just set up the tiles a little differently, but otherwise, there are no rule changes. Just added status ailments, added new characters. You can have more players now, which is cool. 2 new characters who are cool. Really cool expansion. I don't know if they're going to be doing any more of these kinds of expansions for the game. I mean, they could in the future. I didn't know they were going to do one for Happy Little Dinosaurs, the Hazards Ahead one. I thought they were going to do the 2 and 4, and then that was it. This is essentially a follow-up to the Casting Shadows video, which you haven't watched yet. I don't know why you're here. You should go check that video out, and then come back and watch this one. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell.